Welcome to Evolve Here Now, the podcast for leaders who are advancing the meaning and impact of business success, full spectrum health, medicine, and high performance in all areas of life.
This is your home if you are a leader who is ready to step up your impact, inspiration, and personal evolution so that you can serve at the level you know you're capable of and beyond.
Join us now as we recharge, elevate, and accelerate you on your journey into this accelerated evolution community of the world's top influencers.
I'm your host, Talia Jacqueline.
I'm the founder, Satyan Raja, and once again, it's time to accelerate your evolution and your leadership.
Welcome to episode 6 of Evolve Here Now. Today we have Satyan Raja, founder of Accelerated Evolution, and our guest, Nick Lucas. Nick has been an entrepreneur since 1997. Is that right?
Yeah, that's right. Sounds a long time now.
Yeah. And Nick runs several online businesses. And prior to his entrepreneur path, he actually studied for quite some time because he's got 5 degrees and a doctorate in medicine. And now he helps online business entrepreneurs and business leaders upgrade their mind, body, and business through his coaching. So I'm really excited to have you on. And you have such an incredible story and such an incredible journey. So I'm really excited to have you share a little bit about that and what you're doing now and how you found Satyan and Accelerated Evolution. So please welcome and share a little bit about yourself.
Hey Nick, welcome. Thanks for being here, Nick.
Hello and good morning, which is what it is where I am in the world. I think the older you get, everyone ends up having a remarkable story of some type. You know, things happen to us all, don't they? And that's what shapes our decisions. And you know, some people have stories that you know you can make dramatic, but they're only dramatic because of things you tell in the past. But we're only all in the moment, having a choice about what we're going to do in this present moment that will affect our future, isn't it? So look, Satyan and I go back a little while now. We were both members of quite an intense mastermind that was based out of Las Vegas, actually. And but we've never actually met in person, although it feels like we should have. But Satyan reached out to me.
You're in Australia and I'm in Canada, but we've had so many amazing conversations and sharing of sessions and amazing experiences and enjoying each other's life and celebrating life and families. So we've developed a nice friendship as well as a professional admiration and in co-intention together.
Yeah, that's exactly right. I mean, and that's the beauty of the internet, which is why I love it so much, because you know, we all take Skype and calls like this for granted, but they're phenomenal, really, the way
incredible.
They can bring people together.
You're in Australia, I'm in London, you're in Canada.
That's it.
Amazing.
So you know, I mean, Satyan had seen some of the things that I was posting and talking about online. I mean, I'd written a book called Finally Free, which became an Amazon bestseller, and it was about how to deal with stress and anxiety, because I'd had to deal with that personally as well as a lot of people have to. Yeah. But in my work with business leaders and entrepreneurs, it's very, very common among them as well, often for good reason, because as an entrepreneur, you're living right on the knife edge, and sometimes you might have made a lot of money, but then you've got to make a choice to reinvest that money, and it's a stressful life. And he just reached out and said, you know, I'd love to show you what I do. I'd like to take you through a process that I use. And so, you know, on the one hand, I have a very, very healthy skepticism born from, you know, research and science. And on the other hand, I'm open to anything that would help optimize my life. So I readily accepted. And, you know, it was a short technique that created a change in me that was phenomenal and lasting and rapid. And so those things, when you come across those things together, you know, big impact, right? Fast and lasting. Yeah. You know, I had no bandwidth at all to begin to dive into learning new techniques. But as soon as this happened to me, I had to make room. I had to expand my bandwidth. And so I dived into to learning all these techniques with Satyan so that I could add them to my coaching practice, because I had a range of incredible skills, but these really did help me help my clients so much more quickly. And the results I've been getting ever since have been nothing short of fantastic. So for that, I'm very grateful for Sachin for reaching out. And that's a lesson to anybody out there who has a skill and feels scared about reaching out to other people. You should be so proud and full of desire to reach out and share the skill and the value that you bring to others, because they need it. And if Sachin hadn't reached out to me, all the people I've subsequently affected wouldn't have been affected. So you've just got to go for it.
Yeah. Thank you. So beautiful. It is a ripple effect for sure. So
Yeah.
I'd love for you.
Or a tsunami effect.
Or a tsunami.
I feel
That's better.
I feel the same, Nick. It's I reached out to you because I saw that you are in the helping professional field and that you have a strong background in science. I'm not a scientist, but I enjoy science, and I have a fascination and a deep interest in science, as well as I have an interest in just the human dynamic, how we can have a more fulfilling, extravagant, joy-filled, adventurous life. All of us, myself, my family, and those I'm here to serve. And I'm really glad you took that opportunity, and I'm finding now that there's many professionals out there like yourself who have a great, depth and span of practice and cultivation from so much things. So, having that background, I'd love you to speak into more about what you saw about accelerated evolution, how you see it, how do you see it works coming from your neuroscience understanding, and just a little bit more in depth in what it is, how it works, and how you see it serves people from your understanding. I can go on about it, but you have a very unique way of communicating this, and I'd love you to share that, please.
Well, look, I think that our internal world is where we actually, that's where we spend our time. Now, let's take something very practical for a moment. Let's just say that there's a business and they're looking at the products they've got, and they want to bring some revenue in or get some new customers. These are all outward actions that businesses must take in order for them to be successful. But all of those actions all come from their internal world, and their internal world colors everything that they do externally. So my point here that I want to make is just how important our internal world is. That internal world, that ocean of thoughts, our feelings, our memories, our biases and prejudices and our fears. All of those things are this massive ocean of internal world that's sitting there in every single person. But of course, so often in business, it's task and outcome oriented, and so the focus is on what are we doing externally. Okay, but every staff member that you have, if you're running staff, every sales member who has to make sales calls has that ocean within them. How successful they are on the sales floor or on a call, or how successful your marketing team is, or as the CEO, how successful you are in coming up with new ideas or guiding your team. There's this huge internal world, and that's the world that we all, can be so rich and rewarding, but can also be a devastating, horrible world to be in. And I can speak to that, having experienced the highs and lows, and having been to my own version of hell and back when I even had anxiety and panic attack all those years ago. So, this is the question I think all humans have. It's something that we all have in common and we can talk about. And so anything that helps us bring harmony and peace and excitement and gives us some sense of our ability to work with our internal world rather than being just overwhelmed by it. I think that's what happens to so many of us and so many people. We are literally, we are dragged along for the ride. And so any techniques or processes that help us actually saddle that horse, right, and begin to apply some control and direction to our internal world just helps us be that much more effective, and speaks to the things you said, Sachin, about just having a more joyful, productive life where we have more choice. We have the choice to create more freedom. So, I'd been on the lookout for those techniques for a while, and there's lots of approaches that can help do that. But what I was after, and I think what everyone is after, is okay, but I want something that's got more impact, that's faster, and that lasts, because a lot of things don't have much impact, take a long time, and don't last, right? And so that's what attracted me immediately, because of the impact that you had just in that one session we had, and I'm happy to share what it was. I was feeling held back by feelings of not being good enough, which I know lots and lots of people have that feeling. And that was, it's probably 2 or more years ago now, and well, that's what it feels like. And I've never been able to feel not good enough since. And it was a very short session that just resolved that particular issue. So, and I've been able to pass that on to many other people as well. So, so that's speaking to that the feeling and why it's so important, because it helps us to begin to get control of that internal world. How it works? Well, it has to work neurologically, and that it's our brain structure isn't consciousness. No one's got a handle on consciousness, and if they say they do, then they don't. Is consciousness just a product of our brain, or is there something else? I don't know the answer to that. But what we do know is, at the very least, that the brain is what we call the biological correlate of consciousness, that the two are paired together. What happens in the brain is reflected in our consciousness. So, when there is a change in the way we feel and we experience the world and our thoughts and our perspectives, then that has to be mirrored by a change neurologically. And, if we just talk about like humans, this ability to reflect on ourselves and our internal world, this all comes from our frontal lobe, our prefrontal cortex. That's where we plan the future. That's where we can make judgments about how we're feeling and reflect. And, we all know certain people are very skilled at doing that. The people who, when everyone's losing their head in a crisis, there's this one person who seems to be able to step back and keep calm and be sensible.
Yes.
And so we know just in life that some people have more skill than others at this process, and that's because it's got to do with neurologically how they're wired. So everyone's probably familiar with this idea of the reptilian brain. The lizard brain, the brain that is just about survival instincts, desires, fears, threats, eating, sleeping. Well, we've got that. It's called our brainstem. And, we have, well, whether you say we have evolved or we were created, in any case, we've all still got this brainstem, and then over the top of it, we've got this frontal lobe that makes us so very human. Just because we've got a frontal lobe doesn't mean we don't have our reptilian brain. Okay? And so what happens is, so much struggle in the world is caused by this reptilian brain having to make judgments, having fear, and driving us with these emotions that create this internal world, and our frontal lobe sitting over the top of it, really not knowing how to handle this reptilian brain. And so neurologically, I think the accelerated evolution techniques, what they're doing is they're helping integrate this frontal lobe with the reptilian brain, not to make it subservient or not to diminish its importance, but just to give us the potential to reflect on that reptilian brain and decide, hang on, I'm feeling fear. Do I need to enter into that fear and start running around like a crazy person? Or is this fear real? There's a snake on the ground and I should be alerted to it. But I can still now look at that fear, recognize it, and make a sensible decision as a result of that fear. So it's really an integration, I see, a deepening integration or interconnectivity of our frontal lobe with these emotional and reptilian kind of functions that we always as humans have. Can they happen rapidly? Well, yes, they can. And the accelerated evolution processes are proof of that. Just in my life and gosh, in all the people I know you've coached as well. So that's my take on it. However, what I would say is, as much as I enjoy understanding neurologically how it might work, and a lot of people like to know how it works, and I share this information with people I'm going to coach because it helps them feel like there's some legitimacy to what it is. However, you only need to do one technique or one process and have them have this new insight and awareness, and then all of a sudden they don't care how it works. Right? because they're more concerned about just living it and experiencing this increased awareness and ability and freedom and joy and control and the end of struggle. So that's my take on it.
That's awesome. Thank you. Yeah, I find the same. It's like, those who have more of an intellectual bias and wish to have an understanding of how it works first, I do my best. I basically communicate it as, our brain, our consciousness has a series of charges, negative charges that have been imprinted by some type of experience in life where they were not able to confront an adversity, confront a situation. It was overbearing for them. It could be a relationship thing, a family thing, a childhood thing. The gamut is so many ways that we could be traumatized or have negative imprints or resistances or protection mechanisms that we create for the sake of not re-stimulating or re-triggering or getting hurt again, or being in an unsafe manner. And now I get that it has to do, obviously, with this base aspect of our brain on a physiological level. But on a being level, we're not thinking, okay, now I'm thinking from this part of my brain, now I'm thinking from this. We're experiencing it as one whole immediate gestalt in the moment. And so the way I like to explain it is that these charges are tying our full capacity of choice and energy in some past experience. Now, psychologically, we get the idea that the past somehow is influencing our present moment. And once an individual gets that at a basic level, the power, yes, it's in the experience of accelerated evolution. The way I like to share it is, not only does it remove or dissolve the charge, when that happens, what arises is a new level of inner wisdom. And wisdom you can't find, I think, anywhere. I think wisdom is an overall feeling that I'm more capable, more open, more spacious to deal with life from a place of lightness, a place of freedom, equanimity, equilibrium in my state of being, and also healthy distance as opposed to hiding distance or resistance. It's like you can healthy from a state of higher meaning and higher purpose, see what that was for, why that happened, and now you're in a new place. So to me, wisdom is the essence of this. I'd love you to speak to how you've seen this increase or touch wisdom in your own life and the clients that you've been serving,
Well, I think, wisdom points back to that example I gave of a crisis situation with someone who is able to step back and observe the situation. It doesn't mean that they're not scared, or it doesn't mean that they're not very aware of the situation, but they have foresight, they have planning. They can reflect back on lessons they've learned in the past, and they can think about what happens in the future, and they can make choices that are at least taking those past and future thoughts into account in the present moment. And
Yes.
that's where wisdom comes from. Now, they actually might not make the right choice, because no one can tell exactly what's going to happen, but they have that ability. If you compare other people then who that is retracted, they're literally living in a moment of fear, and there really isn't any executive function going on at all. It's literally it's like a reaction in that moment. And the actual thing about it is sometimes that can work. If you see something move and you're walking in the bush and you jump out of the way without thinking, and it's a snake, and you just save yourself, that can work as well. However, in more complex situations, that people face in business, for example, which is where I spend a lot of my time, there needs to be that ability to not get dragged along for the ride. That ability to be able to take into account your past learning experiences and think calmly and optimistically through what the potential solution can be. And that is the wisdom. And of course, the more experience someone has, and the more they can bring to bear, and the more knowledge they can bring to bear to a situation, then the more chance that their wisdom will lead to the positive outcome as well. So wisdom grows as people grow and they practice this. And I think that's probably the point I'd like to make is, in relation to your question about how it leads to wisdom. You talked a bit about our present being affected by our past. There's two types of memories. There are memories that we have about events. Like, I remember the time that you first reached out to me. That's something I remember in the past. But if I hop on a bike, I remember how to ride it in the present, even though when I first learnt it was way back. Okay, so there's two different types of memories. There are memories that are about a past incident, but there are memories that, even though they happened in the past, we access that memory right now in order to be able to be in the present. And in fact, that's what they think, even with the post-traumatic stress disorder syndrome, where people, instead of just reflecting back on an event that happened in the past, they are reliving it in the moment, the same way we relive riding a bike or knowing how to type without thinking. It is a memory. It's something that was learned that is being active in the present. Okay, so this has such a huge impact on how we act. All these past memories that we've had that are affecting our present choice, our present action, without us even really knowing. That's the key thing. Most people don't know that this is why they're acting the way they do until they develop self-awareness. Now, what happens with accelerated evolution, what I've found is, because you begin to develop an awareness that this is what has happened, and you look back over your life at times and decisions that have made in the course of your life, and you begin to develop wisdom about that, then when things happen to you in the present, you are more able to process that event without it being laid down as a charge that then has a non-conscious impact on you, because you've developed an awareness about what's going on inside your mind. Now, mindfulness techniques can help us do this as well. It's that ability for us to at least be able to reflect on our internal world. It's just that what I've found is that the processes that accelerated evolution have, that I use myself, just sped up that ability.
Yes.
To the point where if something happens that's stressful, you notice it, and therefore it doesn't have to get laid down as something that's then going to negatively impact you in the future. Because you've developed the ability to see what's going on.
Very good. Very good. Thank you. That's very interesting, the two types of memory that you're sharing. Talia.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I love the way, I love how you bring in all the neurological aspect of it. And it's interesting because as you're sharing all these details, I'm really seeing it from an overseer of really what this is, because it's not just neurological, it's psychological, it's spiritual, it's really like the gamut of things condensed in one. So yeah, you're just bringing that to my awareness. Beautiful. What fascinates me too, Nick, is that you were a doctor for many years, right? And I'd love for you to speak about your journey into what you're doing now, and that journey of getting here.
Oh well, I did clinical science first. I then became an osteopath, and I practiced as an osteopath for a decade. And then I was also doing study, and I did my PhD and my doctorate in diagnosis. And so that was, learning to really understand what the core problem is before trumping off with treatments. Mm-hmm. You got to get the diagnosis right before you do the treatment. So, that was something that occupied me for a very long time and really took my interest up, and I was passionate about it until I began to pivot away from that. However, the reason I did all that science and all that study was just because I'm a seeker of truth. My father was a preacher. I grew up with that heritage, and the pendulum swung. I went from being completely immersed in that religion right the way through to having zero belief whatsoever, and wanting to be just look at what research could show. And so I don't share the faith in any way that resembles what it was like when I was a child at all. But nevertheless, as a human, we're still looking for, we want to thrive. We naturally want to thrive. And my natural predisposition is to help other people thrive. That is what I do. It's what I've always done. It's one of those things you recognize from your childhood, that's kind of, in a way, it's what your core purpose is to help other people thrive, help them become whole. And so when I now reflect back over my career, all of the things I've chosen to do, even though some of them were misguided, at the core of it though was this desire to know the truth and to help people. What I eventually found after years and years of study and thousands of research papers and all that sort of thing was that, again, for myself, the answer for what set me free wasn't found through what was known scientifically. It was found through me opening myself up to the potential to shift. I mean, we don't have the time to go into it, but it was a very strange situation for me to be in, and there was no science behind it whatsoever, and yet it was one of the most profound shifts I've ever experienced. And so what that caused me to do, for me to remain in integrity and in honesty, I had to say, well, the fact is, even though I could have judged the situation I was in so severely.
I'd love for you to share what that was.
Oh, well, I was in. A friend of mine invited me to go and speak to a woman. And he said, there was no reason. I had no reason. I was not searching to speak to anyone. But he had spoken to this particular woman at a health retreat he'd been to. And he said, don't ask me any questions. She's very sensible. So just go and have a chat. She just asks really interesting questions. So I went along to this. I decided to go along. And it was only because I trusted so implicitly in this friend and colleague of mine recommendation. So I went along. And as I got to, it was in a house, and as I was walking up the side of the house, there was a whole lot of things that should have been like a red flag to a bull. There was the sound of wind chimes. There was the smell of incense, and right, and then when I got into and was greeted at the door and was walking through, there were there were symbols everywhere, and it was your alternative medicine kind of place that for me as a scientist, there was just a lot of symbols there that I
Not so
I was judgmental about. Exactly. However, the warmth when I was greeted by this woman, the warmth that she exuded so surpassed all the symbols. That we just connected as humans, right? And so what I did at that moment was unique for me. I decided that, I'm going to treat this like a ride at a amusement park. You don't go to the amusement park and judge the ride. Well, you want to make sure it's safe, right? But you go along and you go on for the ride, and you don't have to be in judgment about it. It's one of those moments I remember a shift. Mm-hmm. So, we sat down and we started talking, and within 10 minutes, I couldn't speak, and the reason I couldn't speak was she'd asked me a question that that if I told her the answer, I would have turned into a blubbering mess. I would have just been sobbing with the answer to the question that she asked within 10 minutes, and so I had to sit there in silence because I couldn't answer the question because of the truth of that answer. There was so much pain. You see, now this is something I'd overcome. I'd forced myself through it, and I had succeeded despite an event that had happened. And and I think many people can relate to this because we're fighters, right? Mm-hmm. We fight. We will not lie down. We will persist. I don't care what's happened to me in the past. Forget about that. Fight. And it works, but it's exhausting. Yeah. And that moment taught me that I still had, Sachin, as you referred to, I had this immense emotional charge. Mm-hmm. Underlying my everyday actions that she was able to bring up in 10 minutes and it was actually with just one simple question. And, when I was able to answer the question, it seemed like at least 5 or 6 minutes for me to answer that question. And, one, it was incredible to be able to give the true, honest answer to that question. And secondly, it taught me quite a lot about judgment. And it also became the catalyst for me to recognize that there are answers all over the place, and that you don't have to agree with the person. You don't have to believe in their reasons or their background or their symbology to receive a truth that there might be there. Mm-hmm. Because if it's a truth, if it's something valuable, then it is for you. Then it's valuable for you, independent of them. Mm-hmm.
Yes.
It's valuable, independent of their beliefs, of their color, of their training and their qualifications, or of anything at all. It's valuable to you because it's valuable to you. And if you miss that, then you shut yourself off to the potential value because of judgments that we have. Mm-hmm. So. That goes down. The judgment conversation goes down an entire other path. But that was the experience. So, I kind of forgotten how we even got to that. But I think that the point was that, I'd done the science, and I've come out the other side. I love entrepreneurs. I love business people. I think the reason that they are doing what they are doing, there's a lot of reasons, but it's an intense creative desire, or it's a desire to be completely autonomous. It's being in complete integrity with their own values, and therefore they want to do things their way. It's wanting to have autonomy and freedom from being told what to do, because they can be their own boss. And then there's the financial rewards that come with a successful business. And some people do it out of necessity because there's nowhere else to turn and they have to do it. But all of these, I relate to all of those things. And so that's why I love working with entrepreneurs, because they're creatives. And I don't mean creative in terms of, they're painting and taking photographs. I'm talking about that they are creating their world. They're creating opportunities for other people. And I think it's incredibly courageous of someone to put their offer into the marketplace and have it fail or succeed. That there's nowhere to hide. If you're a business owner, if you're an entrepreneur, there is nowhere to hide. You're either making it or you're not. And I've personally found entrepreneurship and business to be the most incredible journey of personal development, because you have to do those things. Yes, there's all the practical aspects of running a business that you have to get good at. You have to know how to get people into your business and convert them into customers and look after them and deliver your product. But you can only do all of those things because of having that, of becoming whole inside, of gaining control over that internal world. Yeah. And of course, if you don't gain control over that internal world, then you can still be an entrepreneur, but the journey is very, very rocky and very challenging. And there's a lot of struggling businesses and entrepreneurs out there who need my help because, there's so much value in them. What we need to do is help them get control of that inner world so they can be so much more successful through their business and the lives they reach as a result of that.
Yeah.
Thank you. And thanks for doing that work. I know as an entrepreneur for myself and all the entrepreneurs I coach, most of it is mindset, psychology, inner congruency. Most entrepreneurs are very savvy, very smart, very sharp. Most know what they need to do. They may need more clarity here and there, but it's the activation of where they're coming from that I think the next level, next generation entrepreneur who wants a total form of fulfillment, not just one narrow bandwidth of financial success, but they want to have the whole gamut. It's time for a new generation of consciousness around this,
Let's throw something really practical in the mix to give that some real context. I was speaking to an entrepreneur the other day, very, very, very successful, has launched multiple businesses and is, and helps other businesses launch their business as well. And what came up was this charge of boredom, of how resistant he is to things that are boring. Hadn't thought about it much, but when he thought about it and we talked about it, it actually showed up as something that was really limiting his ability to be that much more effective, because he avoids the things in his business that he finds boring, even though they are often the very things that are the most important for him to do to see, for him to reach his goals.
Yes.
So as I reflected on this too, because that's the beautiful thing about being a coach, you get to reflect on these things yourself, is, one of the ways that entrepreneurs are taught to avoid boredom is to delegate, right? Is to get someone else to do that thing that's boring. And that's okay, that can work. However, that is a resistance. That is saying, I'm going to resist what is boring so I don't have to do it. And that could be a wise choice. However, what's interesting to me is the charge that is associated with that. Why are they bored by something that might only take 5 minutes, and they don't do it for 3 weeks because they're bored by something that only takes 5 minutes? There's something dysfunctional when you hear that, or when you notice it in yourself. Yeah. So, how do you then deal with that? Well, you have to go back and you have to not psychoanalyze, but you have to use, if you have access to a technique that can help someone remove the charge associated with boredom. It doesn't make an act not boring. It means that you can do that 5 minute or 15 minute or however long it takes, but that boring thing that you're resisting to do so much, you can do it even though it's boring, but without the full history of the negative charge of all the boring things you've ever had to do and been through. And that could be a phenomenal change in a business, because once that charge is removed, they can then make a choice about delegating boring tasks without the full emotional suite of past boring events. That is a very practical example of using accelerated evolution to help neutralize the charge associated with boredom, so that an entrepreneur can get in and do what needs to be done. Because often they're the very things they're not doing. Entrepreneurs are, especially if they've got a bit of, if they're creative, and that they're constantly coming up with new ideas, and they're working on all the new ideas and never following through with the boring task of getting it done.
Yeah.
Right? So that's just one example. And there are, as you know, Sachin and Talia, there's many, many examples like that if you resolve them, you free the entrepreneur and the business person to act, act in flow and not against resistance.
This is right on.
Yeah.
Absolutely. When you're speaking, I'm going ding, 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 ding. I'm seeing all my clients. I'm seeing myself. This is brilliant. So I'm going to go back and do some accelerated evolution myself.
You too.
Listen, to finish this off, I'd like to ask you, you've been around the block, you've been around different methods and so forth, and different modalities. If someone is inquiring about what we're up to here, who do you say this is for? In terms of learning, who is this really for, accelerated evolution, and why should they study it? I'd love to hear from you what your inspiration is for them.
Well, I think that learning to control and integrate, reptilian brain, frontal lobe, and learning to have control of that, I think is everyone's birthright. So everyone should learn how to do that, so that they can be more effective in their life and the work that they do in their life. I mean, let's just think for a moment of the turmoil in the world, and some of the key decision makers who are going to influence the outcomes of all kinds of things in the world. Imagine if those people came to a situation without negative charge. So politicians need to do it. Generals and leaders of armies need to do it. Business leaders need to do it. School teachers need to do it. Children need to do it. It's everyone's birthright. Who would be good to learn the techniques and apply them? Well, it's people who know that they've got a natural inclination to want to be able to serve other people and help them thrive. So it's the obvious things to come to mind are the health professions. Anyone when you put the person's mind, and I'll kind of use a bit of a metaphor here, but when you put the person's mind at the heart of their problem, then you can still need to do the physical things. You still need to measure their blood pressure and their sodium levels and potassium and all the different things that medical people do. But if you put their mind, this reptilian thing, and their ability to deal with it, you could help patients deal with their situation so much more. Business is obviously, any people involved in business coaching it's obvious that this would be an incredible opportunity for them to learn techniques to help them coach their clients. So anyone who is an existing coach or mentor, anyone who's a teacher, it's that group, and it's people who don't know what to do, but they feel like they want to serve other people and help them, then you can bypass a lot of other things and learn this powerful group of techniques, and that will be enough to get them going. So, I think anyone in religion, so the leaders of various religions would also find these techniques useful and powerful, and that's because it doesn't matter what religion you are. We've got the same brains, and this doesn't require you to have certain beliefs, because they're literally just processes that happen in your awareness that don't have to challenge any of the beliefs that you have, but you can use these processes as well. So it's kind of, I'd like to give you a specific, here's exactly who should do it, but it's like I think everybody should experience it, because they're techniques that help people get control of their inner world, and it's anyone who's involved in caring for people and coaching them and leading them will find these techniques effective.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Yeah, and it is your birthright. That's what you're here for. All of us are here for, to evolve and to grow, and that's life. So it's such a beautiful answer. It's for anyone. It's for anyone and everyone.
Nick, thank you so much for sharing freely of yourself today and sharing about what we've been up to as a team and as a group and in your own world. How can folks get in touch with you, business folks, business leaders, to find out about your coaching and how you serve them?
Oh, they can just go to, it's just my website. It's pretty easy. It's nicklucas.com. The only trick to it is there's no K in the Nick. It's just NICLUCAS.com.
All right. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much for coming on the show and giving so much wisdom and so much of your own experience. So much. I'm gonna get to work from this conversation. So thank you for sharing.
Oh, it's my absolute pleasure. I'm honored to be able to come and talk about it.
Thank you. So
Thanks,
you so
guys.
much. Tune in soon, guys.